Okay, so I want you to picture your morning routine.
Yeah.
You're maybe putting on some foundation, or maybe you're getting that perfect red lipstick just right.
hmm
Now, just hold that thought, because a huge literature survey we've been looking at suggests something pretty wild.
Wild is one word for it.
The average woman might eat, inadvertently, about 1.8 kilograms of lipstick in her lifetime. That's almost 4 pounds.
It's a truly staggering figure, and really that's just our jumping off point today for this deep dive into one of the most invisible threats in our daily products.
We are talking about heavy metals and chemical toxins
We're-
just hiding in plain sight in cosmetics and skincare.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to unpack all of this research to figure out where these dangers come from, how they get into your body, and why some people, especially kids playing dress up, are at such a higher risk.
It's a huge issue. So maybe we should start by naming the culprits. The research we looked at flags 7 big ones:
So?
lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, chromium, nickel, and antimony.
That sounds like a shopping list for a Batman villain, not what's in my moisturizer.
Mm.
But the key here, and the research is really clear about this, is that this stuff isn't being added on purpose, right?
No, not at all. That's a critical distinction. They're what we call unintentional contaminants.
Unintentional.
Yeah, think of it like a hitchhiker that you can't get rid of. These heavy metals are just everywhere in the environment, in the soil, in the water. So when a company sources raw materials, especially mineral pigments for colors or, botanical ingredients from plants.
Those plants have already absorbed trace amounts of metals from the ground.
Precisely. And so it's already in the raw material before it even gets to the factory.
So wait, if I buy something that's marketed as like all natural or mineral-based, the very thing that makes it sound safe is actually the source of the contamination.
That's the paradox. It's the challenge the whole industry faces. Getting rid of it completely is, well, almost impossible. And then these trace amounts get more concentrated during processing and refining.
And the research says this is worst in color cosmetics.
Yes, anything with a lot of pigment. And really shockingly, in things like skin lightening creams.
Okay, this is where we have to get into the specific numbers because they are just jaw-dropping. Let's talk about the mercury in those skin lighteners.
The numbers are alarming. This survey, which pulled data from studies all over the world, found mercury concentrations up to 105.59 parts per million.
105. And what's the recommended limit?
Well, to put that in perspective, the US FDA generally recommends a limit of just 1 part per million. 1.
So over 100 times the limit. How are these products even on the shelves? I mean, shouldn't there be alarms going off everywhere?
It really highlights the problems with the global regulatory system, which is something we can get into. But it's not just mercury. Lead levels in lipsticks were found up to 6.37 parts per million.
Which makes that 4 pounds of lipstick statistics so much more terrifying.
It does. And chromium, which is in a ton of different products, was found as high as 416 milligrams per kilogram.
Okay, so the metals are there. We've established that. But how do they get from my skin into my body? How does it become a systemic risk?
There are 3 main ways in. The most common is what's called dermal absorption. So tiny amounts get through your skin's outer layer, the stratum corneum.
Just seeping in?
Seeping in, yeah. Through diffusion or through your sweat glands. But then, of course, for lip products, it's the oral route. You're just eating it.
And for powders, like setting powders, eyeshadows, the stuff that makes that little puff of dust when you open it.
That's the third route, inhalation, especially with something fine like talc powder. But here's the concept that really matters, the one the research drives home. It's called bioaccumulation.
Bioaccumulation.
Yeah, we're not worried about a single application. The real danger is that low-level daily exposure, day after day, year after year. It builds up. It creates a toxic load in your organs, your liver, your bones, and especially your central nervous system.
It's like toxic debt. A small daily charge doesn't seem like much. But after a decade or two, you've got this massive load your body can't pay off. It sounds like a slow-motion attack on the body's main command center.
That's a great way to put it. When we talk about neurotoxicity damage to the brain, lead and mercury are the 2 biggest threats.
Okay.
Lead is, it's a master of disguise. It gets through the blood-brain barrier because it mimics calcium ions. It basically tricks the body.
So lead is like a double agent pretending to be calcium to get past security.
Exactly. And calcium is essential for literally everything your nervous system does.
Mm.
So when lead takes its place, it starts damaging critical parts of the brain, like the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus.
Which are for memory and decision-making.
Right. And over the long term, that damage can show up as cognitive issues, ADHD, and it might even contribute to diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's later in life.
And what about mercury? Is it just as bad?
Oh, yeah. Mercury gets into the brain fast, and it starts binding to the machinery inside your cells, the mitochondria, which are the power plants. It just gums up the works and disrupts everything at a cellular level.
This is where it stops being just a personal health issue and becomes a massive public health and even an economic one.
Mm-hmm.
The research cited studies that actually tried to calculate the cost of all this.
They did. One estimate found that just from methylmercury exposure, the European Union loses about 600,000 IQ points every single year.
600,000 IQ points annually.
Right.
That's,
Yeah.
I can't even picture that. What does that translate to in economic terms?
According to that study, it corresponds to an economic loss of nearly 10 billion euros
Yep.
every year. That's the price tag for these trace contaminants.
Oh, wow. Okay, so beyond the brain, what's next? Cancer seems like the other big worry.
It is. We have carcinogenicity and genotoxicity. Some of these metals, arsenic, cadmium, nickel, certain forms of chromium, are confirmed carcinogens.
So how do they cause cancer? What's the mechanism?
It's mainly through something called oxidative stress. The metals make your body overproduce these aggressive molecules called reactive oxygen species, or ROS.
ROS.
Think of them as tiny little grenades going off inside your cells. They damage everything they touch, your DNA, proteins, cell membranes. And the research confirmed that lifetime cancer risk assessments for most cosmetic types were way over the acceptable limits.
So we've covered the brain and DNA, but it goes even deeper, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It affects our hormones, our body's messaging system.
Yes, this is a huge area of concern. These heavy metals act as endocrine-disrupting chemicals, or EDCs.
They mess with your hormones.
They do more than mess with them. They can mimic them, block them, or just change how they're made. For reproductive health, this is a really big deal.
And what does that look like specifically for women?
Well, the research links exposure to female infertility, lower levels of key reproductive hormones, and problems with estrogen signaling. We see specific things, too, like lead exposure delaying puberty in girls or mercury increasing irregular periods. It's a profound systemic effect from very low chronic exposure.
If the risk for the general population is this bad, I'm almost afraid to ask about the most vulnerable group, our kids.
This is probably the most critical takeaway from the entire body of research. Children are not just tiny adults. Their bodies are fundamentally different.
Their skin is thinner, right?
Much thinner. Their skin barrier, that stratum corneum, isn't fully mature until they're about 6 years old. And that means they absorb these metals way more easily.
How much more?
About 4 to 5 times more readily than an adult. For some metals, a child's absorption rate can be up to 50%, 50. For an adult, it's more like 5 to 15%. It's like an open door.
An open door, and then you have the whole hand-to-mouth behavior, so they're just eating the face paint when they're playing.
Exactly. And the data on kids' makeup is terrifying. One study found that nearly half of all the Halloween face paints they tested had at least one heavy metal, lead, cadmium, you name it.
But the thing that really stood out to me, the part that's just unconscionable, was about talc-based products. For kids.
It's a nightmare scenario. Testing found asbestos contamination in about 14% of talc-based kids' makeup products. Toy makeup kits.
Asbestos. And there is no safe level of asbestos exposure.
None. Zero. Inhaled fibers can lead to cancer decades down the line. It has absolutely no place in a product meant for a child.
And what about those skin lightening creams we talked about?
That risk extends to infants. One study found that almost 20% of mothers surveyed said they applied these creams to their children, mostly kids under 2, risking severe, irreversible mercury poisoning.
We also have to mention the toxic trio in nail polish.
Right. Formaldehyde, toluene, and dibutyl phthalate, a known carcinogen, a neurotoxin, and a major endocrine disruptor. On top of that, you have PFAS, the forever chemicals.
Where are those found?
A ton of places. The research said they found it in 82% of waterproof mascaras, plus foundations and liquid lipsticks.
And PFAS are linked to developmental delays and a weaker immune system in kids. It really seems like every stage of development is under assault.
It is. The developing brain and hormonal systems are just so sensitive. And the risks extend to other groups, to pregnant women because the metals cross the placenta, and occupational workers like hairdressers and nail techs who are breathing this stuff in all day, every day.
So with a problem this massive, what are the regulators doing? You mentioned the system is fragmented.
It's a mess. The European Union has the strictest rules. Their philosophy is basically, if it's toxic, you ban it, period. You only allow trace amounts that are technically unavoidable and only under very strict manufacturing practices.
But the US FDA is different.
Very different. The FDA recommends a max of 10 parts per million for lead, which is already looser than Canada or Germany. But the real issue is enforcement. The FDA doesn't have the authority to issue a mandatory recall for cosmetics.
Wait, say that again. If the FDA finds dangerous levels of a neurotoxin in a lipstick, they can't force the company to pull it from shelves.
That's correct. They can issue warnings, they can advise, but they have to rely on the manufacturer to voluntarily recall the product.
So the burden is basically on us, the consumers, to be aware. Because if a company decides not to issue a recall, that product just stays in the store. It stays in our makeup bags.
Precisely. Which is why the researchers stress the need for better manufacturing practices and much better quality control of raw materials. You have to get the contamination out at the source.
We should also quickly touch on nanoparticles, like in sunscreens.
Right. Titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. They're great for blocking UV rays.
But are they getting into our skin?
The current research suggests they don't really penetrate intact skin. But there are still questions about what happens with damaged or sunburned skin and the potential to generate those ROS, those little cell grenades we talked about. It's still a big area of research.
So what do the authors say we still don't know? Where are the biggest gaps?
We still have limited data on the effects of really low-level exposure over a full lifetime, and especially the cocktail effect. What happens when you're exposed to lead from lipstick, plus mercury from a cream, plus arsenic from your foundation, all at the same time.
Right.
And we definitely need more long-term safety data on nanoparticles.
Okay, so let's bring this all together for everyone listening who might be side-eyeing their makeup bag right now. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive?
I'd say first, heavy metals are everywhere in cosmetics. They're often unavoidable contaminants, and that cumulative daily exposure creates very real long-term risks, especially for your brain and reproductive system.
Second, children are uniquely vulnerable. Their bodies absorb these contaminants 4 to 5 times faster than adults, and they face horrific risks from things like lead, asbestos in toy makeup, and mercury in creams.
And third, you can't rely on regulations to be the same everywhere. The rules are inconsistent globally. The U.S. system relies heavily on voluntary recalls, which means, at the end of the day, your awareness and vigilance are your most important tools.
So the big picture takeaway is that this isn't about, some evil plot. It's about the invisible cumulative damage from trace elements that are slowly eroding our health, mostly because of a patchwork of global standards.
Exactly. And that leaves us with a really important question for you to think about. If we know that these low daily exposures contribute to massive IQ point losses and irreversible damage in kids, what immediate non-negotiable changes should we as consumers be demanding from manufacturers about how they source their materials and how transparent they are with us?